Thank you very much, Pakistan Academy of Sciences, for providing us this opportunity. Can you see my screen?
Yeah.
Okay. So I'll straight away move on to the overview of our presentation. I'll talk about regional scale scenario, subcontinent and continent scale. I'll talk about challenges, opportunities, data-driven intervention. Some of them have been introduced by Chinese scientists. Examples from Pakistan and remote sensing of crop water use. And my colleague Etudaz from Canada, he will talk about precision agriculture, farm scale, and soil and nutrient management, and precision agriculture machinery. So our challenge is currently, it is well covered by our previous speakers. I will not spend time on them. Biggest challenge, if I would pick one from them, is the lowland and water productivity. It is one of our biggest challenges in our agriculture. We are wasting huge amounts of water and producing less crop from the same amount of water. Definitely flood irrigation still is dominant in Pakistan, although governments are spending in drip irrigation and other high efficiency irrigation projects, but still a huge amount of land is flood irrigated. Our water productivity is among the lowest, almost 10 times lower than the United States, and 3 times than India, and more than 2 times than China. So just a quick, roundabout about these figures. We grow wheat around 20 million acres, and we apply 2-inch irrigation, and we apply 6 irrigation to wheat crop, as our water system is a supply-based system. Definitely I can understand this argument that we cannot control water at farm. Farmers are restricted by Varabandi system. If it's their turn, they have to irrigate. But definitely this is a debatable issue, and there can be, solutions can be devised for that. But the opportunity is that we can survive wheat crop with 4 irrigations. And if we only save these 2 irrigations, which is 2 inches each, 3 inches each, it is almost 6 inches of water. And 6 inches of water with 20 million acre feet of land under cultivation, we are saving 10 million acre foot of water, which is more than the Vela reservoir. What are opportunities? So Earth observation systems are increasing in capacity. Ground resolution is improving. Overpass is increasing, temporal frequency, number of satellite images in a month is increasing, which is a big opportunity. This has never been the case in the past. So, like Dr. Weinstein did is, we can do studies, we can monitor cropping systems sitting in one location. We do not need any extensive ground information to uncover this information. So this is a big opportunity, the availability of satellite information, and we can use that to predict crop yields. And this is a case study from Bundaberg region, which is one of the largest sugarcane grown region in Australia. And we were able to predict sugarcane yield. This was done with the collaboration of Sugar Research Australia quite accurately. And imagine if in Pakistan, we always, there is a crisis whenever there is a crushing season, long quiz, and there is traffic troubles, and then farmers are in trouble. They don't get paid, or maybe their crop is not assessed well, or they have trouble with the weighing system as well. If we can assess crop yields in the farm, and then those farms are next to each other, you can imagine what change it can bring. This is another example before going into a case study from Pakistan, developed data for applied agriculture remote sensing centers. So we have mapped 3 food crops in Australia. And in order to better model and in order to make more informed decisions, definitely we need to know the location and the region, the area under cultivation for each crop. It is really critical of making further decisions. So we recently completed, I think a couple years ago, a study while I was in Pakistan with Food and Agriculture Organization. And we developed crop suitability maps, and we redefined actually agroecological zones, because as I mentioned that there is now great amount of Earth observations data available, and we can utilize that data to make policy decisions. So we developed crop suitability maps, and we uncovered many amazing facts. One of them is the areas which have potential to grow wheat crop, and where we are currently cultivating wheat crop, we can cultivate canola in those regions, and this was the case with many others. We actually developed 56 crop suitability maps, and this was meant to be an organic document, as is mentioned that the improving technology and scale of satellite observations is going to increase the more reliability and accuracy in these documents. This is one example. This was a model also developed at Agriculture University, Faisalabad. I think it was initially for 6 districts. Soil samples were taken, and based on that soil survey, fertilizer recommendation based on nutrient management model is given to the farmers of these districts. So these prototypes and technologies in pockets, not a complete holistic models, but it is functioning and it is working. So this is an example case study from St. Recently did, I think we completed this last month. So we were planning to bring some land into production around Halaji Lake in Khatta, and using satellite imagery, we did its vegetation analysis, and also we were able to estimate actual crop water around the lake. This is really a game changer. So the ability to estimate actual crop water consumption from remote sensing, it can go a long way. It can improve our water governance, which is very, very crucial. And based on that, we can do targeted investment in irrigation schemes. We do not need to prescribe drip irrigation to each and every farmer of Pakistan. Maybe drip irrigation is suited to one land and water condition and not suitable to other. And also we can do on-farm water management if we know actual crop water requirement and actual crop water use. For them, for this kind of information and on-farm water management, weather information and access to weather data is really, really critical. So I would further ask my colleague, Dr. Evapotranspiration, to move forward from here.
Thank you, Azim. Thanks for controlling the slides. And so Azim briefly touched on the larger scale. I'll be going in more in the field scale, and we'll be introducing 3 case studies which are very brief, and we'll try to go through those and see how they can be implemented and can be used in the Pakistan region. So the first one, as we all know, that will be soil is our primary medium, and that is exhausted, and we are low on organic matter, and if we can assess the soil fertility status, we can manage and then manage our inputs smartly, and then we will talk a little bit about sprayer technology and then crop water requirement. Next slide. So in order to manage our soil, so this is a case study from Prince Edward Island. We used a technology that we call it soil and topography mapping. So we did the mapping that is georeferenced, and we come up with our map. Next slide. And when we build this map, so this is something it will look like. So you can see different colors, and that is mapped with that SWAT tool. And then we prescribe, and we have different grade across the field, and we went with just for potash application, and there could be other applications which we can use and apply. And here is the next visual snapshot, which is done with SWAT mapping, then compared with a drone mapping with NVDI and yield map. and we have a very good comparison, about 70 to 80% match, where the crop health was bad, we were getting the less yield, and then vice versa with the NDI zones. Next. And then not only that, so we go with in Pakistan and in the rest of the world, usually we go with one consistent seed spacing. So the idea here was that if our soil is not good enough to produce, so we need to maybe change the seed spacing. So this is again a squat map. We use this as a tool to adjust our seed spacing. And the idea was that the red areas, they are low productive areas, are not healthy soil areas. We will be spacing the potatoes out, and then in greener areas, which are productive areas, we will put the potatoes a little bit tighter so that we can generate more and kind of have a less of a pressure and can produce more. Next slide. And we did the emergence calculation. This is the plant emergence map that was done with RGB imagery. You can see different emergence scenarios in plant count and canopy cover. Next slide. And here are some images which are basically telling how many plants were there with the 15-inch spacing and 17 and 18-inch spacing. Next slide. So when we did the yield comparison for the variable rate seeding, we found that in the productive areas where we put the potatoes a little bit together, we were able to produce significantly higher yield than the traditional spacing. And also, interestingly enough, in the low productive areas, when we spaced the potatoes out, we found that there was a less of a competition and we were able to increase the yield significantly. And we are exploring this in a more detail this year. So the next case study I want to share with you all is about smart technology. We developed this sprayer for potatoes, and we using the artificial intelligence and machine vision, we collected all kind of images during the growing season with a different combination, healthy plants, diseased plants, weeds, their combination, and all kind of variation in cloud, sun, and partially cloudy, all those conditions. Next slide. So once those images were collected, we built our own database where we identified what is what. So in this image, you can see the lamb's quarter, which is a common weed in potatoes, so that is labeled. And then for the disease images, we also labeled and we made that database. Next slide. So once that model was trained, you can see that as soon as it picked the weed, so it will create a rectangle around. So this was a lab testing that we did by running a validation data set to see how accurate we were, and our accuracy was more than 95%. Next slide. So once the lab testing was done, so the next step was to develop a prototype, so that contained the control box, cameras, solenoid valves, flow meters. We custom built this, and then once that was built, we tested it. Next slide. So this was the test we did in the parking lot. As soon as and we scattered different potato plants and weed plants around the parking lot. And as soon as it will take the weeds, which is lamb's quarter in this case, it will open the nozzle. So again, this was the whole of the lab test. Next slide. And then we field tested that sprayer for different weeds and diseases again. Again, the accuracy was over 90%. And now this year we are making some changes to the prototype and making it even more a better speed control and more consistent within those rows. And finally, we will be going the bigger scale so that we can cover the industry. Next slide. So in all the cases, when we did the savings analysis, we were able to save over 40% of the agrochemicals, which is huge agrochemical saving. Next slide. So in Pakistan scenario, so I did a bit of a cost estimation. So to build this prototype, it will require roughly 5 lakh. And based on the applications we have, the rate on return will be very, very quick. I would say less than growing season. Next slide. So the last case study I want to cover is to do the weather-based forecasting for crop water requirement. Next slide. So this case study again we did in Prince Edward Island. So we selected 4 weather stations. We had the data available for last 30 years. We used different parameters from the weather station data if we can do the crop water requirement. And bear in mind we are an island, and in island we are rain fed. And we don't have access to the water because there are limits set by the government that we cannot have excess water. Next slide. And we applied the convolutional neural networks to model that relationship and determine the crop water requirement, which is a newly emerging technology. That's a buzzword on the street, neural network these days, machine learning, artificial intelligence. Next slide. So when we did the evapotranspiration forecasting, so we used different deep learning models, and our accuracy was about 90%, that without doing the physical data collection, we were able to forecast that evapotranspiration, which we can link back to the crop water requirement. Next slide. And these are 2 sites, and those two sites were tested, and again accuracy was above 90%. Next slide. And here is the variable of relative importance. You can see the maximum temperature, relative humidity, wind speed during the year. So those variables go up and down depending upon the crop water requirement. But more or less, the main contributors were the maximum temperature, relative humidity, and solar radiation. So if we have that data, we can model this relationship to determine the crop water requirement. Next slide. So when we did that for a testing period, and in 2016 and 2017, as I said, we are rain fed. You can see the black line, which is the solid line, so that is the actual requirement, which is calculated by the deep learning. And then the dotted line underneath that is the rainfall or precipitation which we get during the growing season. So we want to fill that gap so that we can utilize our water efficiently. Next one. So then we did the forecasting. So the idea here is that since the weather app gives us a weather for the week, we want to have a evapotranspiration app which will give us the crop water requirement, and that will be linked with the weather data, so that we can know that how much is the precipitation we are getting, and then how much is the difference, whether the precipitation is good enough or we need supplemental irrigation. And the provincial government and federal government here in Canada, they are very keen and interested in this app and interface for the growing community. Next slide. And here is the more fluctuation, and you can see the error rate is about 1 millimeter per day, which is not nothing. So that means it's highly accurate, and you can see this. There is a weekly forecast using different models. Next slide. And based on this information, we had a small trial where we have 4 different irrigation systems which we tested. Next slide. And we set up that trial, we control the water, we applied based on the need. Next slide. And then here is the profitability analysis. You can see, irrespective of the irrigation system, whether it was drip or fertigation or sprinkler, the control, which is rain-fed, the yield was significantly higher. So not only the yield was higher, but also the marketability of the potatoes was higher. Next one. So some take home from this presentation, which we co-shared, Azim and I. So we need to look for the ways how we can go for the cost reduction using these innovative tools. Also utilize diverse information, that is the satellite data, weather data, and have big data analytics so that we can use that data for the wise decision making and come up with a decision support tool and modeling. And then at the end, we want to integrate our data, instrumentation, prescription so that we can ensure profitability and sustainability. And also not only since these are new technologies, we need to go for capacity building and train our young generation so that we can cope with the world's requirements. Next slide. At the end, I would like to acknowledge some of the collaborators for these case studies who provided the funding support. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Itudal and Azim. We are really proud of both of you. It was about the mechanization, precision, efficiency, marketability, and profitability, which are all at stake in Pakistan's agriculture. We lack mechanization, we are extremely imprecise, and then obviously that leads to inefficient agriculture. And who is suffering? Farmer is suffering, and the consumer is suffering. You know, we produce less from the same land and water as it was mentioned in the presentation compared to what is being done in more efficient and precise agricultural systems. Finally, Itudal has raised a very important point that even if we bring in machines, all the computers, all the softwares, we need to invest into training and more human resource development so that we could make best use of the tools available or the technologies which are sitting in the shelf and not being put to use. Okay, so we move on and to our very best speaker, mentor of many of us, Dr. Qasrullah Malik. He will join us virtually from FC College, University, Lahore. Malik Saab has been an ardent supporter of biotechnology. He has founded so many institutions and he continues with his campaign to make biotechnology a success in Pakistan. Unfortunately, we attempted just in one crop and totally destroyed that crop, cotton. So we have failed to make use of the best options, even in worst conditions. So over to you, sir, Dr. Qasrullah Malik. Biotechnology role in ensuring food security.
Thank you.